When I asked my son, Leo, about his wedding, my daughter-in-law, Clara, answered with a chilling smile, "Oh, we got married last weekend. It was just for our inner circle." Those 4 words hit me like a physical blow. Her inner circle, not me, not the woman who paid their $600 monthly rent for 3 years and furnished their apartment. I stood frozen, watching my son refuse to meet my eyes while his wife sat comfortably on the sofa I bought them. In my closet, the $250 lavender dress I had so carefully chosen hung like a ghost, a symbol of the wedding photos I would now never be in, and the $1,500 gift I had set aside that would never be given. It's a feeling of betrayal that cuts so deep. Have you ever felt your world collapse from just a few words? Share it with me in the comments. The click of the disconnected call was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It echoed in the sudden, deafening silence of my living room, a space I had filled with warmth and love, but which now felt as cold and empty as a tomb. I stood frozen, my fingers still clenched around the cordless phone. It felt impossibly heavy, a dead weight in my hand, much like the hope that had just died in my heart. My eyes drifted to the sofa where Clara had so often sat, laughing as she told me about her latest emergency, a car repair, a dentist bill, a must-have dress for a friend's party, all of which I had dutifully paid for. The floral pattern on the cushions, a pattern I chose because I thought it was cheerful, now seemed to mock me. My gaze was fixed, but I wasn't seeing the room. I was seeing Leo as a little boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, his small hand tucked firmly in mine as we walked through the park. I remembered the absolute trust in his eyes, the way he would look up at me and say, "You're the best mom in the world," as if it were an undeniable fact of the universe. When had that boy vanished? When did he become this stranger who could stand by silently while his wife gutted me with a few carefully chosen words? I searched my memory, combing through years of birthdays, holidays, and phone calls, trying to pinpoint the exact moment the shift had happened. But there was no single moment. It was a slow erosion, a gradual chipping away at respect and affection that I had been too blind, too willing to please, to ever notice. I had mistaken his dependence for love. Mechanically, I placed the phone back in its cradle. My feet carried me, almost of their own accord, down the hallway to my bedroom. I opened the closet door. There it was, the lavender dress. The fabric was a soft, flowing chiffon, the kind that catches the light and seems to float. The price tag, $250, was still attached to the sleeve. I ran my hand over the material. The dream I had woven into it so vivid I could almost touch it. I saw myself standing in the background of a photograph, smiling with pride as Leo and Clara cut their wedding cake. I saw myself dancing with my son, my heart full, a quiet, dignified presence on the most important day of his life, all for a wedding that had already happened, a wedding to which I, the mother, the benefactor, the fool, was not considered inner circle enough to attend. I closed the closet door, but the image was burned into my mind. The pain was so sharp, so physical, it felt like a shard of glass was working its way through my chest. Had it always been about the money? Was that all I was to them? An open wallet? A financial safety net? The thought was nauseating. In a haze of disbelief, I fumbled for my phone. My thumb trembled as I opened my social media app, a place I rarely visited. It took me less than a minute to find Clara's profile, and there it was, proof. A new profile picture, posted just 2 days ago. Leo and Clara, beaming. He was in a sharp navy suit, she in a beautiful white dress, a dress I now realized had been paid for with the $800 I had given her last month for personal expenses. They were standing under a floral archway, champagne flutes in hand. I scrolled through the album, each picture a fresh stab of pain. There were Clara's parents, posing proudly on either side of the couple. There were her siblings, her cousins, a crowd of smiling friends, a whole world of special people. I wasn't in any of them. I was invisible. I didn't exist in their perfect story. I sank onto the edge of my bed, my phone dropping from my numb fingers. The silence returned, heavier this time, filled with the ghosts of their laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses. My mind began to do a grim, involuntary accounting. The $600 on for rent, every single month for 36 months. The down payment on their car, which they'd sworn was a loan they'd repay. The endless groceries, the concert tickets, the weekend getaways I'd funded so they could make memories. It wasn't just the money. It was the love and care I had poured into every dollar, believing I was building a foundation for their happiness, for our family. Now I saw it for what it was. I hadn't been building their future. I had merely been financing it. The hours bled into one another. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my bedroom floor. And still, I sat there, wrapped in a cold blanket of shock. The woman who had woken up this morning, excited to call her son, was gone. In her place was someone I didn't recognize, a woman hollowed out by a betrayal so profound it had reshaped the very landscape of her heart. Just as dusk began to settle, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange, a sharp, jarring noise cut through the stillness. It was my phone, buzzing on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen, my heart giving a painful lurch. It was Clara. A week after the secret wedding, a week after the humiliation, she was calling. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that she wasn't calling to apologize. She was calling because she needed something. For a long moment, I let the phone buzz, the frantic vibration a stark contrast to the deathly stillness of my home. Each pulse was a reminder of their audacity. A week. They had given me 1 week to grieve the family I thought I had, and now the bill had come due. Their bill. I took a slow, deliberate breath and answered, holding the phone to my ear without a word. "Ilara?" Clara's voice, stripped of its usual condescending confidence, was thin and trembling. "Thank God you answered. I've been calling and calling." I remained silent, letting her panic fill the space between us. "Listen," she stammered, the urgency escalating. "I don't know what's going on, but the landlord just called. The rent is overdue, Ilara, 2 months of it. He said if we don't pay 200 by Friday, he's starting the eviction process. You forgot to make the transfer." You forgot. As if it were my duty, my chore, a simple lapse in my memory. The words formed in my mind, cold and sharp as ice, rehearsed in the silent agony of the past week. I finally spoke, my own voice so calm it startled even me. "Clara," I said, the name feeling foreign on my tongue. "I believe I made myself clear. I only help those in my inner circle, oh." The silence on the other end was so absolute, I could hear my own steady heartbeat in my ears. It was a sound of strength I hadn't heard in years. For the first time, it was not I who was left speechless, but her. I don't understand," she finally managed, her voice barely a whisper. "You've always been there for us. You're like a second mom to me." "A second mom," I repeated, the bitter irony coating every syllable. A second mom who wasn't special enough to be invited to her son's wedding. Goodbye, Clara. I ended the call before she could utter another lie. Hanging up didn't bring me joy. It brought a chilling clarity. That night, I didn't cry. Instead, I went to my study and pulled out 3 years' worth of bank statements. It was a pilgrimage through my own foolishness. With a pen and a legal pad, I began to write. The rent, 600 x 36 months. $21,600. The living room furniture, the dining set, the new mattress, $3,500. The down payment on their car, a loan that was never mentioned again, $4,000. Birthday gifts, Christmas presents, anniversary dinners, at least a $5,000. Clara's personal expenses, her emergencies, the countless times I'd sent her a few $100s just because, another $4,500. Each number I wrote down was a monument to my misplaced generosity. The ink bled into the paper, a testament to the lifeblood I had drained from my own savings, the inheritance my late husband had left for my security, not for their comfort. The final sum stared back at me from the page, stark and unforgiving. $38,600. That was the price of their ingratitude, the price of being excluded. The number didn't make me sad anymore. It filled me with a cold, hard resolve that settled deep in my bones. The next morning, I was at the bank the moment it opened. Mr. Henderson, the branch manager who had known me for 20 years, greeted me with his usual warm smile. "Good morning, Alara. Here for the usual transfer?" "No, David," I said, my voice firm. "I'm here to do the exact opposite. I want to cancel all automatic transfers programmed from my account, permanently." His smile faltered, replaced by a look of professional concern. "Are you sure? Is everything all right?" "Everything," I replied, feeling a strange sense of liberation, "is finally becoming all right." I signed the paperwork, my signature clear and steady. I also had him change my account details and block any inquiries from Leo or Clara. I walked out of that bank feeling lighter than I had in years. The chains I hadn't even realized I was wearing had finally been broken. That sense of freedom lasted until I pulled into my driveway that afternoon. 2 cars were parked at the curb, Leo's sedan and Clara's hatchback. And standing between them, leaning against Leo's car as if he owned the whole street, was a man I'd never seen before. He was in his 50s, wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly pension, with a slick smile that didn't reach his cold, calculating eyes. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced myself to get out of the car. "Mom," Leo said, his voice laced with a rehearsed, condescending concern. "Thank God you're here. We were so worried. You weren't answering your phone." "Ilara, honey," Clara cooed, rushing to my side and trying to take my arm. "We need to talk. This is Mr. Adler. He's an attorney, here to help us with your situation." I pulled my arm away from her grasp. "My situation? I'm perfectly fine. The real question is, what are you all doing at my house?" Mr. Adler stepped forward, extending a hand I had no intention of shaking. "Mrs. Schmidt, your children are deeply concerned about your well-being. Your recent financial decisions? They're erratic. They suggest you may no longer be capable of managing your own affairs." The word hung in the air between us, ugly and venomous. Incapable. "We think you need help, Mom," Leo pressed on. "Mr. Adler has prepared some documents, a simple power of attorney. It would allow me to manage your finances, just to make sure you're protected until you're feeling more like yourself again." I stared at my son, at the stranger wearing his face. They weren't trying to protect me. They were staging a financial coup on my front lawn. They saw my newfound strength not as empowerment, but as a mental breakdown. They wanted to have me declared incompetent so they could regain control of the ATM. A laugh, dry and humorless, escaped my lips. "Let me get this straight. You exclude me from your life, bleed me dry for years, and when I finally turn off the tap, your solution is to try and have me declared mentally unfit? Get off my property. Mom, be reasonable. Out!" My voice rose, sharp and clear. "All of you, get out of my sight, now." Clara began to cry, but they were the familiar tears of frustration, not sorrow. Mr. Adler simply retrieved a folder from his briefcase. Mrs. Schmidt, this is not over. We have options. The court takes cases of elder incompetence very seriously. It was a threat, plain and simple. They were going to try to steal not just my money, but my very autonomy. Leo looked at me one last time, his face a mask of petulant anger. You're going to end up old and alone, Mom. You'll see. I looked right back at the son I no longer knew and delivered the painful, liberating truth. Don't you understand, Leo? I already am alone. The only difference is, now it's by my own choice. As they drove away, I stood on my porch, trembling not with fear, but with a righteous rage. This was no longer just about money. This was a war for my life, and I had just realized I had to fight. Watching their cars disappear down the street, I knew their threat was not an empty one. The cold professionalism in Mr. Adler's eyes told me they had a plan, a strategy designed to paint me as a confused, senile old woman who needed to be protected from herself. For a moment, a wave of fear washed over me. I was a 72-year-old widow. What chance did I stand against my own son and a ruthless lawyer? But the fear was quickly replaced by a steely resolve. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness for the last time. My first call wasn't to a friend or a family member. It was to Mr. Keller, the lawyer who had handled my husband's will years ago. He was a quiet, meticulous man with an impeccable reputation for specializing in elder law. I sat in his mahogany-paneled office the next morning, the scent of old books and leather strangely comforting, and laid out the entire sordid story. My bank statements spread across his desk like evidence in a murder trial. He listened without interruption, his expression growing graver with each detail. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, his fingertips pressed together. "Ilara," he said, his voice calm but firm. "What you are describing is a textbook case of elder financial abuse. And their attempt to coerce you into signing a power of attorney under duress is not just unethical, it's illegal. The fact that they brought a lawyer to your home to intimidate you is proof of premeditation." Hearing my turmoil defined in such clear, legal terms was both terrifying and validating. I wasn't going crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I was a victim. They threatened to take me to court to have me declared incompetent, I whispered, the words still tasting like poison. "Let them try," Mr. Keller said, with a thin, determined smile. "We will be ready. Our first step is to build a fortress around you, both legally and physically." And that's exactly what we did. That same day, I had a locksmith change every lock on my house. Next, a security company installed a complete system with cameras covering every entrance. It felt strange, turning my home into a fortress against my own child. But the quiet beep of the activated alarm that night was the most reassuring sound I had heard in weeks. My next stop was a new bank, where I opened an account and began the process of moving my assets, creating a financial firewall they couldn't breach. With the legal and physical defenses in place, I knew I needed to shore up my emotional ones. I picked up the phone and called my sister Anya in Denver. I had been avoiding her, ashamed to admit the reality of my situation after years of painting a rosy picture of my wonderful, successful son. This time, I told her everything: the secret wedding, the confrontation, the legal threats. The silence on her end was heavy before she finally spoke, her voice laced with a sorrow I knew was for me. "Oh, Ilara, I'm so sorry. I wanted to say something for years, but I didn't know how." "Say what?" I asked, my heart sinking. "Every time we talked," she explained gently, "Leo never spoke about loving you. He spoke about what you gave him. Mom helped with the car, or Mom is covering our vacation. It was always transactional. And Clara," She always spoke about you in the future tense. When we inherit the house, we'll remodel the kitchen. It was as if you were already gone in their minds, just a temporary obstacle between them and their inheritance. Her words were a punch to the gut, but it was a necessary pain. It excised the last lingering shred of doubt. They didn't just see me as an ATM. They saw me as an estate waiting to be liquidated. That evening, as I was still reeling from Anya's revelation, my new doorbell camera chimed on my phone. On the screen was my next-door neighbor, Ingrid Hoffman, a woman I'd only ever exchanged polite waves with. She was holding a small potted orchid. I opened the door, surprised. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said, her kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "But I heard the shouting the other day, and I saw the locksmith. I just wanted to make sure you were all right." Her genuine concern was so unexpected, it almost brought me to tears. I invited her in, and over a cup of tea, I found myself pouring out the entire story to this near stranger. She listened, nodding with a sad familiarity. "My dear," she said when I finished, placing her hand over mine. "I went through something similar with my nephew 5 years ago. The playbook is always the same. First, create dependency. Second, isolate them. And when they finally say no, attack their competence." Her words mirrored Mr. Keller's, but from a place of shared experience that was deeply comforting. Ingrid quickly became more than a neighbor. She became my first true ally, a lifeline in a sea of betrayal. She insisted I join her book club, which turned out to be less about books and more about a weekly gathering of sharp, resilient women in their 70s and 80s. There was Maria, who had to get a restraining order against her own son. There was Cynthia, who had fought off her grandchildren's attempts to sell her house from under her. They listened to my story not with pity, but with understanding and righteous anger. "They've picked a fight with the wrong woman," Cynthia declared, raising her teacup in a toast. Sitting in Ingrid's living room, surrounded by these women, my new inner circle, I felt a strength I hadn't realized was missing. I was no longer a lone victim waiting for the next attack. I was part of a sisterhood. We had all seen the ugly side of family, and we had all survived. They were my witnesses, my emotional support, and, as Mr. Keller would later confirm, they would be my character references. The fortress was complete. I had legal counsel, physical security, financial protection, and a band of loyal friends. The storm was coming. I could feel it in the eerie silence from Leo and Clara's side. But for the first time since that fateful phone call, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. The first volley in their renewed attack was more insidious than I could have imagined. It came not in the form of a lawyer's letter, but as a polite, firm knock on my door. A professionally dressed woman with a sympathetic smile introduced herself as a social worker from the Adult Protective Services. They had, she explained, received an anonymous but deeply concerned report that I might be in a vulnerable situation, a victim of self-neglect and potential manipulation by new influences. The stench of Clara's manipulation was all over it. They had weaponized the very system designed to protect people like me. My blood ran cold, but I remembered Mr. Keller's advice. Stay calm, be transparent, and call me immediately. "Before we speak," I said, my voice steady, "I'd like my lawyer present." The social worker's smile tightened. "That won't be necessary if you have nothing to hide, Mrs. Schmidt." "It's not about hiding," I countered, looking her directly in the eye. "It's about being protected. Please, have a seat. He's on his way." When Mr. Keller arrived, he dismantled their narrative piece by piece. He presented my pristine financial records, my new security measures, framed as a rational response to a threat, and a preliminary letter from my physician confirming my excellent health. Faced with documented facts instead of fabricated concerns, The social worker's investigation crumbled. She left with a folder full of our evidence and an apology for the intrusion. The case was closed. But it was only a temporary victory. 2 weeks later, the official summons arrived. Leo and Clara had filed a formal petition in family court. They were suing to have me declared mentally incompetent and for Leo to be appointed my legal guardian, granting him full control over my life and my assets. Seeing it in black and white, my own son's name as the petitioner against me, was a betrayal so profound it momentarily stole my breath. This was it. The final battle line had been drawn. The day of the hearing, I dressed not in the lavender of a forgotten dream, but in a sharp, dark gray suit. I looked at myself in the mirror, not as a victim, but as a warrior. Ingrid and my friends from the book club sat in the front row behind me, a silent wall of support. On the other side of the aisle, Leo and Clara sat with Mr. Adler, avoiding my gaze. Leo looked pale and nervous. Clara, on the other hand, radiated a cold, righteous fury. Their lawyer, Mr. Adler, began by painting a picture of a beloved, generous mother who had suddenly and tragically descended into paranoia and confusion. He claimed I was being manipulated by opportunistic neighbors, and a lawyer who was racking up fees. He presented his witnesses. A disgruntled neighbor from across the street testified that I had installed an unnecessary number of cameras and had started keeping strange company. He twisted my newfound social life into evidence of instability. Then, Clara took the stand. Her performance was masterful. Tears streamed down her face as she described her heartbreak over my supposed decline. "We just want to help her," she sobbed, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "We're so scared she's going to hurt herself or that someone will take advantage of her." During cross-examination, Mr. Keller was surgical. "Mrs. Schmidt," he began calmly, "in the 3 years before these events, can you recall a single month where you did not receive financial support from my client?" She stammered. Well, she was always happy to help. That wasn't the question. And is it true that when your financial support was withdrawn, you and your husband almost immediately sought legal counsel to gain control of her assets? "We were concerned about her well-being," she insisted, her voice rising. "Or were you concerned about your income?" Mr. Keller retorted, letting the question hang in the air. Leo was next, and seeing him swear to tell the truth before preparing to lie about his own mother was the most painful moment of my life. He repeated the narrative of my erratic behavior, his voice trembling with what he likely thought passed for sincerity. Mr. Keller approached him. "Mr. Schmidt, what is your current occupation?" "I'm between jobs at the moment." "And for how long have you been between jobs?" "A few years." "So, for 3 years, a 35-year-old man, you have been financially supported by your 72-year-old widowed mother. Is that correct?" Leo flushed, unable to answer. The foundation of their case, their supposed selfless concern, was cracking under the weight of their own greed. Then, it was our turn. Mr. Keller called Dr. Vogel, a respected geriatric psychiatrist, to the stand. She presented the results of a comprehensive mental competency evaluation I had undergone. "Mrs. Schmidt's cognitive functions are not just sound, they are excellent," Dr. Vogel stated unequivocally. "She is sharp, logical, and demonstrates a profound understanding of her financial and personal affairs. There is zero clinical evidence of incompetence." Ingrid and Cynthia testified next, speaking of my clarity, my renewed zest for life, and the supportive, healthy friendships I had built. They painted a picture not of a paranoid recluse, but of a woman re-engaging with the world after years of isolation. Finally, I took the stand. I looked at the judge, then let my eyes rest on my son. I told my story. I didn't cry or raise my voice. I simply stated the facts. the 38,600, the secret wedding, the phrase inner circle, the threats, the fear, and the eventual decision to protect myself. Mr. Adler, on cross-examination, tried to trip me up. "Mrs. Schmidt, isn't it true that you feel resentful toward your son for his happiness?" "I have never resented my son's happiness," I replied, my voice clear and strong. "I resent being treated as a bank account instead of his mother. There is a profound difference." The judge, a stern-faced woman named Miller, listened to the closing arguments and then called for a recess. The 2 hours we waited felt like an eternity. When she returned, she looked directly at Leo and Clara. "After reviewing all testimony and evidence," she began, her voice leaving no room for argument, "it is the finding of this court that Ilara Schmidt is not only competent, but is a clear-minded and capable individual who has been subjected to significant emotional and financial pressure by the petitioners." A collective gasp went through our side of the courtroom. "This petition is not born of concern," Judge Miller continued, her gaze hardening. "It is born of greed. The request for guardianship is emphatically denied. This case is dismissed." I had won. I looked over at Leo. For a fleeting second, as the reality of his defeat washed over him, I saw a flicker of the little boy I once knew, lost and ashamed. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by the now familiar mask of resentment. It was over. The war was over, and I was, for the first time in a very long time, truly free. Leaving the courthouse felt like stepping out of a long, dark tunnel into the bright sunlight. Ingrid and my friends enveloped me in hugs, their joyful tears mingling with my own silent ones. They weren't tears of sadness, but of profound relief. I had not just won a legal case, I had won back my name, my dignity, and my future. As we walked away, I glanced back one last time. I saw Leo and Clara in a heated, hushed argument with their lawyer, Mr. Adler, who looked thoroughly defeated. Clara shot me a look of pure, unadulterated hatred before turning and storming off. Leo just stood there, a solitary figure adrift in the consequences of his own choices. That was the last time I ever saw him. That night, my house, once a fortress of defense, became a hall of celebration. Ingrid and the book club threw a small party for me. We toasted not with expensive champagne, but with Prosecco and heartfelt laughter. "To Ilara," Cynthia said, raising her glass. "A woman who reminded us all that it's never too late to reclaim your life." In the months that followed, I learned that freedom wasn't just an idea, it was a series of choices. My first choice was to sell the house. It held too many ghosts, too many memories of a love I now knew had been an illusion. I sold it and bought a beautiful, modern apartment downtown with a balcony overlooking the city park. A place that was entirely mine, with no history but the one I was about to create. I knew I couldn't simply erase the pain of the past, but I could transform it. I took a significant portion of the money, far more than the 38,600 wows they had taken from me, and made a large, anonymous donation to a local charity that provides free legal aid to elderly individuals facing financial abuse. I imagined it helping another mother, another father, find the strength to fight back. It was the best money I had ever spent. With the rest, I began to live. I, Ilara Schmidt, who had never traveled further than a neighboring state, booked a trip to Italy. I walked through the ancient streets of Rome, stood in awe under the Tuscan sun, and learned to make pasta from a woman named Sophia who laughed with her whole body. I rediscovered a passion for pottery I had abandoned in my youth, my hands finding joy in shaping clay on a spinning wheel. I volunteered at the city library, reading stories to children whose eyes lit up with the kind of uncomplicated love I had so desperately missed. I never heard directly from Leo or Clara again, But news travels in a small city. I heard through the grapevine that they had been forced to downsize to a tiny apartment on the outskirts of town. I heard that Leo had finally taken a job, stocking shelves at a grocery store. And I heard that Clara, for the first time in her adult life, was working as a waitress. Perhaps, I sometimes thought, hardship would teach them the lessons my generosity never could: the value of a dollar earned, and the dignity of standing on your own 2 feet. Some evenings, I sit on my new balcony, a cup of tea in my hands, and watch the city lights twinkle to life. I think of the woman I was just a year ago, fearful, heartbroken, and believing her worth was tied to what she could provide for others. That woman is gone. In her place is someone who understands a fundamental truth: you cannot buy love, and you must never put a price on your own freedom. And so, Ilara's story comes to a close, leaving us with a quiet but powerful truth. True love can never be bought, and the most valuable thing we can ever own is our own peace and self-respect. It's a reminder that setting boundaries isn't an act of cruelty, but an act of profound self-love. It really makes you think about the unspoken contracts we have in our own families. So, I'd love to ask you all this. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect your own well-being, even if it meant disappointing someone you loved? Please, share your stories and your wisdom with us in the comments below. Your experience could be the light someone else needs to see. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today and for being a part of this incredible community. In our next video, we'll explore a gripping story about a family secret that comes to light after 40 years, changing everything. You won't want to miss it. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other. See you next time.